You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London. My name is Brendan Cole. This is Telling It Like It Is, our weekly look at the stories making the headlines as discussed by the broadcaster James Whale and the former Kremlin advisor and editor of StirringTroubleInternationally.com, Alexander Nekrassov. Gents, welcome. Finally, nearly 2.5 weeks, I think, the US Congress has passed a bill to reopen the government, raise the federal debt limit, hours to spare before the nation risked default. A bit of a close shave, James.
It worries me greatly, and I think the Americans have to look very deeply into their souls. I say that because they've always got some sort of religious connotation. There's always a preacher there at the opening of Congress and everything else. I do find that slightly annoying. Do you know, they're supposed to be the world's only superpower, and they behave in a way that could have damaged the economy and the lives of people in the rest of the world. And it's not acceptable for them to behave in this way.
Barack Obama said that the Republicans were holding the country to ransom, Alexander. This isn't Barack Obama's fault. This is the fault of a small minority of extremely right-wing Republicans known as the Tea Party.
Yeah, you always blame the Tea Party, don't you? Everybody blames the Tea Party.
They're an easy target, aren't they?
Yes, this bill means nothing.
Well, yes.
America is printing $82 billion at least a month of new money. So they could have paid everybody. That doesn't work like that. America is undermining the world economy. It's hitting China, hitting Russia, because by printing money, it devalues the dollar. Russia sells all its oil and gas in dollars. China holds, some say 2 trillion, some say 7 trillion of U.S. Treasury IOUs. And they're very worried about that. So all that brinkmanship which we saw is actually nothing.
To actually explain it, I thought it was more interesting. Every taxpayer in America
You said it twice.
I know, but it's important.
Hit us with the big one.
I'm going to say it again. Their debt, right, equals the same as £1 million for every tax-paying American. That's a lot of debt.
And it will rise because they're printing money like mad. And they will print another 2.7 trillion. And the debt which they approved is 17 trillion. And they can never repay this debt. So basically what America is doing, it's virtual economy and they're playing games.
I think what some of them said today as well is that they are embarrassed about the way the American government has behaved. And I think they should be. I think it is embarrassing.
They're all to blame, by the way. You say Barack Obama is not to blame. Of course he's to blame. They had to negotiate and they had to talk behind the scenes and don't create that situation. So you can't just say a group of Tea Party senators or congressmen decided to do this. Everyone is to blame.
They decided to do it because they opposed Obamacare. They wanted to. This was the way that they could stifle Obamacare.
Obamacare, by the way, is a very dodgy thing.
It gives 50 million people the access to healthcare that they never had.
Exactly. On the surface, yes. But if you dig deeper, there are many, many things there that people don't like. For example, the pharmaceutical companies and medical insurance companies making a fortune. Why do you think they support Obama on that? There are many, many other issues there. So don't just say it's a wonderful law.
Yeah, but they're bringing medicine and medical help to people. Listen,
they've got no money to pay for it, James. They've got no money to pay for it. It's cost $1 trillion.
Then how many countries have enough money to pay for it and how many people do? But, you know, the problem is that they're trying to do something good for the majority of people in America. And in many ways, America's a third world country. The vast majority of people in America don't have passports. Don't actually know if you pointed to
12% have passports in America.
12%.
Well, they don't need them.
No, but this is a problem.
Their driving license is their passport. Why do they need a passport? They don't go anywhere. They don't care about anything.
That's a problem, and that's a lack of education, and I think it affects the rest of the world.
Interesting that this idea of Obamacare is really They held the British model of the NHS up, which I think is globally renowned for its fairness and as an example of socialism. An interesting argument made against Obamacare. It shows that the argument was very complicated. A lot of people just simply didn't understand how it was going to work. This idea that getting free medical cover, whatever the pharmaceutical companies were getting, Alexander.
Yeah. No, it's a cost of somebody else. That's the problem, you see. When America is in recession and they don't have any recovery, it's just rubbish, of course, because they're just printing money and they feed the markets and it trickles down from the markets, but it's not a recovery.
So
the moment they stop printing...
Hang on. What would help solve the ills of not just America, but here we are, most of the planet in financial crisis?
Oh, very simple. You have to completely reform the banking system. It's corrupt, it's inept, it's using taxpayers' money.
So
it
why doesn't
only
somebody do
exists
it?
because it receives injections of taxpayers' money. We are now having people running our finances across the world who created the crash of 2008. They will create another one because they realize they make money out of it. We have to reform the banking system completely.
So why
and
isn't
now
there a world government who want to do it?
We have to hit them with a levy in order for them to repay us all the trillions we gave them.
$17 trillion debt. Who's propping that up? China.
China, of course. And China is very worried.
And where
Thank
did
you
George
very much
Osborne go
indeed,
this
China.
week?
And Boris Johnson.
And Boris Johnson.
Yes, don't forget Boris Johnson. He might be Prime Minister one day.
He might be Prime Minister. Boris Johnson stood out like a sore thumb, didn't he? His floppy white hair in China. But what did you make of what he had to say? He
was
basically says that...
isn't he? He is entertaining, let's
He is
be
very
honest, you
entertaining.
know.
A great...
James likes him, so we have to be careful.
No. I have no political views one way or the other. I think, look at them all. Put them
He
all
was
in a room.
ogling Chinese women there. Have you noticed that?
No, I didn't notice
Well,
that.
he
George
did.
Osborne or
No,
Boris?
Boris. George Osborne doesn't like
How
that.
can you tell that he was ogling
It was
women?
on all the photographs.
Was it?
Yes.
He just smiles all the time.
No. He's not smiling. He
Ogling,
wants to be Prime
ogling
Minister.
Chinese business, though. What do you
weight.
make of this pledge? I mean, it seems to be an interesting one. There was a big delegation that went to India not so long ago, drumming up British
Begging
business.
for money.
If it brings work and prosperity to Britain and helps the other countries as well, I think that's a good idea.
No, they are begging for money, James, because the economy is not recovering. And they have to show that it's recovering because the elections are coming.
We want
so
to
they
get
are going to
business with-
paper all those holes with that money, and they are begging those Chinese businessmen to rebuild, Crystal Palace and so on,
Look,
or something. And I think it's Boris that was doing that.
It's not begging. There's a business.
But listen. Can you imagine British Trade Mission with the Chancellor in charge going to China and begging the comrades to give them money to invest and promising them relaxation of visa restrictions?
No, because it's a different world now.
And China saying to America, you sort your act, guys, or else. Remember, one of the Chinese ministers said when the default was looming. I love this. It's a change.
In those days of Mao Zedong and everything else, you wouldn't have got into China. You wouldn't have got into Russia. Look, it's a different world. We're all getting closer together. It's good, and if we all help
I'm
each other
looking on
out...
the funny side of it. Come on, James.
But on the one hand, there is this debate about tightening visas and entry
Not
to
for the
Britain
Chinese.
for certain people from Eastern Europe. But on the other hand, here we have a visa relaxation.
Well, that would be fine if we had any way of controlling our borders, and blatantly, obviously, at the moment, we don't.
Because you see, Russians can pay, or East Europeans, rich ones, you can pay $1 million investment into Britain, and you get automatically a visa,
that's
business
fine.
visa.
If somebody's coming to this country to
Then
invest
you
money
get
in
it
with
back.
money...
No, you invest it into bonds, then you get it back.
Okay.
That's how you got here.
Yes.
He's just not allowed
1
out.
million or 10 million? Okay, so that's George Osborne. That's the Chancellor. The British Prime Minister told the House of Commons yesterday during Prime Minister's questions that Andrew Mitchell, the former Chief Whip, is owed an apology over the so-called Plebgate affair. He says that the conduct of officers from the police Federation was unacceptable. Now, this goes to the heart of...
So did the Home Secretary as well.
So did the Home Secretary. Now, there seems to be quite a few, casting aspersions on the police force. Is it a good idea?
I interviewed Keith Vaz, who is the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, yesterday, and Keith came on and said, I have an exclusive for you. I said, well, that's very nice. He said, yes, I can tell you that these 3 police officers now are going to appear before my committee next week.
Wow.
They weren't going to.
This is
they
tough.
are now going to. Right. Well, it is tough because these 3 chief constables have decided, for some strange reason, there wasn't anything to answer. They wanted to brush this under the carpet. There most obviously was. And the problem is that a bunch of policemen thought that, and I don't want to tar all the police force with this.
Don't you dare.
Thank
do
you.
that.
There's some excellent policemen in this country who do a very difficult job, but there are a couple who really have to have their hands slapped. And what they've decided now is that they were going to say, well, we had Andrew Mitchell come and talk to us, and he didn't answer the questions. Andrew Mitchell very cleverly recorded the conversation, which has, of course, now been played to everybody on every news program going, and the transcript has been in the papers. And he did answer the questions. Maybe the answer to the questions they asked him wasn't what they wanted to hear, but he certainly answered the question. So now I think a number of policemen have got to actually come up and receive their punishment, as any of us would have to.
But wasn't it strange that the IPCC conducted this review and then one of the members of the IPCC said that actually the review wasn't very good?
Yeah. It was rather strange.
That is odd.
Deborah Glass.
Deborah Glass.
Yeah, that's very strange. And if they're all going to play this out in the media, I think that's probably why the Home Affairs Select Committee Chairman Keith Vaz decided he would come out and tell me on the media. He says, I'm telling you before I'm telling anyone else.
What are the Chief Constables going to say, do you think? I mean, they're going to get a roasting, aren't they?
I would have thought they are, and I think it'll be a very interesting news story next week when we see what they have to say.
But the cops don't like this government.
The cops don't like any government.
No. They don't like them because they cut the numbers. They are quite ruthless in those,
we haven't got the money. We have to do something.
Stuff. Yeah, but they don't touch the bankers, do they? So the cops don't like them.
Actually,
I don't even know who likes them. And another thing which puzzles me, why should a cabinet minister use a bicycle?
He's environmentally friendly.
No, come on.
He's thinking about the environment.
Look at his face, environmentally friendly. You know, this is showing off. No, he has a car. He has a bodyguard who would have sorted out those policemen. So, this is also this showing off.
No, I don't think that's right at all.
One of the people who was supporting the idea of cutting the police numbers. So there was obviously a sort of a conflict of interest.
Why did the media fall hook, line and sinker for this story? Everyone sided with the police.
Because the cops passed the story to the Sun.
Because basically we have an excellent police force in this country. And people thought that the police were being badly treated by a minister who was being a little rude.
He's praising the police force all the time. There's something very strange here.
Well, we live in a country with a great police force.
Why are you praising the police all the time?
Don't blame everybody on your own actions. There is an importance here. We are at risk of the police losing the trust of the public in this country. And the police in this country police by public consent. And it is an important issue that needs to be cleared up and can't just be swept under the carpet.
You're talking like a Labour councillor.
It's an important issue for the police as well as for the public. End of.
And on that note of ruling by public consent, there are concerns that that particular police system, which is a particularly British one, may be under threat if plans by the policing minister Damien Green come into effect. This would involve direct entry for candidates from Canada, Australia, the US, to join the police as superintendents and inspectors.
But the US will be fun, trigger happy.
Can you imagine?
I don't think it's as silly as some people first think, because a lot of policemen, senior policemen and not so senior policemen, decide they want to go and live in another country, go over to America, maybe to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, I don't know where, and they get jobs in the police force over there. And if there is a good policeman who decides that he wants to move and he is the best person for the job, and they think that perhaps he would bring something new to the job that quite often people from outside the country can bring, then maybe it's a good idea.
Not exactly a vote of confidence in the skills of.
I don't think it makes any difference. Will it make it? I mean, where do you come from, Brendan?
New Zealand.
Am I getting upset about the fact you've got a job in broadcasting over here?
No, hold on. We're talking about the cops here. Come on. In America, have you seen the cops in America in action?
You see, you say these ridiculous things again. There's nobody coming from another country and policing as they do in their own country.
Of course, they will do that.
They're not going to be carrying guns.
There won't be bobbies on the beat. I think the idea is that they would arrive at quite a senior level, kind of a strategic level, and they would sort of oversee.
And of course, the local bobbies will despise them, and they will hate them.
That is the point. That's the
problem, because these ministers, they are mostly completely out of touch with real life.
Let's move on from this to something that's happening today. Actually, as we do this program outside on the streets of London, there are thousands of teachers walking up and down.
Today? Good. I support the teachers, always. No, I always support the teachers, because I've seen what is happening at schools when parents come in and scream at them, and they have no right to respond because their kids said to them, Ma, Pa, she said something to me. It's unbelievable. There is no control over these children and over these parents.
What do you make of their demands, James?
Well, I'm stuck in the middle a little bit, and I don't want to be called liberal again, so just watch it. I think, teaching is the most important profession, isn't it? I mean, without teachers, you don't get anything. You don't get the scientists, and you don't get anything. So you need great teachers.
This is patronizing for us.
No, I think you do. You need great teachers.
Without teachers, you don't get scientists.
You don't get anybody without good teachers. You don't get the doctors. You don't get all these sort of people. So I think teachers need to be respected. But in this country, teaching has never been a respected profession, which is balmy.
Show me a country where it is.
Finland.
Show me.
Finland. Actually,
but
there was a
Finland
study.
is not a proper country.
Finnish teachers get paid as much as lawyers, as much as barristers. They're very respected. It takes a lot of training.
Would you like to go and live in Finland? You tell me. Would you like to go and live
for 3
there?
or 4 months of the year? I could definitely handle
exactly.
it.
Well,
May
maybe
and
for 2 weeks
September.
or maybe one day.
I think the point is there are countries where teaching is valued, and I don't think it's valued here.
You're absolutely right. I don't think, and I think people have the right to withhold their labour and everything else, okay, in a democracy. I don't think it's a legal requirement in this country to send your child to school. And if you don't, you get fined. If you take your child... And so, therefore...
Even though most of that stuff they teach there is not, useful.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London. My name is Brendan Cole. This is Telling It Like It Is, our weekly look at the stories making the headlines as discussed by the broadcaster James Whale and the former Kremlin advisor and editor of StirringTroubleInternationally.com, Alexander Nekrassov.
I don't think the teachers are going to do themselves any good marching through. In fact, the vast majority of teachers are not on strike today. It's only about a third of the teaching workforce, and even less actually turned up to vote on this ballot to strike. So like everything else, it's not really going to achieve anything. All it's going to do is alienate parents and teachers again against each other, and it isn't going to it's going to play into the hands of Michael Gove, who's not a very popular education secretary, to say the least, and this is going to play into his hands.
There are certainly concerns about the skills levels of kids when they leave school, and there's a school in South London and Upper Norwood that's banned slang words used by pupils. The F word is banned, but like you was in it, all that kind of stuff has been put up on a board. It's been banned, and in fact David Lammy, who's the MP for Tottenham, has backed this, and he said that the only shame is that there weren't more words on it.
I back it because I tell you, one of the problems we have in this country today is a lack of ability to communicate verbally. So you can text and tweet and Facebook, and you can write and everything else, but often one of the problems of young people getting employment is that they turn up for an interview, and often the person interviewing them can't understand a word of what they're saying.
What does it have to do with slang?
Because kids got this street vocabulary they think is great, and unfortunately, when they leave school, they're still speaking like they're about 10 years old. And I think, we went through a phase where nobody corrected anybody's grammar in this country. It was considered to be far too intrusive and not politically correct. And so nobody said, well, you can't say that. You've got to speak properly. And now we've got to the situation where people are coming in from abroad, taking jobs because they are more eloquent than people born and brought up in this country.
It has got
everything to do with slang.
No, nothing at all.
Too much slang.
If you forbid something for kids, they will actually do it even more. It's not the way to do it. This is a very stupid way to do it.
In Russia, you let your children just do whatever they want?
Yes.
No wonder
we are a
you're
free
like
country
you are.
there, yes, unlike some countries.
What about when they get a bit older and they want to drive a car, and plans have been unveiled for raising the age for people to have a full driving license?
You can't have a full license until you're 19, but you can have intercourse when you are 16, and I think they're making it 14 soon.
They're not making it.
They're debating it at the policy unit in the 10 Downing Street.
They're not.
And there's also the voting age is going to be 16. So there's some sort of strange discrepancy here.
There's no doubt that driving a car is a very dangerous thing in this country, and that we have an enormous...
What do you mean dangerous?
Well, of course it's dangerous. I've seen the way you drive. There's an imbalance, of course, of the age of people having accidents, and young people, new drivers, do tend to have the majority of them.
You're getting old, James. You're getting old.
5 times more.
Yeah,
You're 5 times more
more
likely to have an accident before the age of 21.
And the problem is, I know you don't drive, you only cycle everywhere, but if you did have a car, you'd have to insure the car. No, you don't know anything about that. And the insurance to drive a car in this country now
Only sissies insure their cars. Come on. It's for
appalling.
sissies, car insurance.
So we don't trust younger
Ignore
people to
him.
drive cars, but we do trust them to vote.
Yeah, well,
To vote at a younger age.
Exactly. Decide which government will be in place, which government will misuse our taxes and so on. So I think it doesn't make sense.
What about prisoners? Should they vote?
Yeah, of course they should.
But they're not.
No, but they should be. It should be compulsory for a prisoner to vote. Most people don't vote in this country in elections. Under half vote. And if you are in prison, that means you are antisocial. You don't fit into society. Part of your rehabilitation should be made to listen to some of the drivel that comes out of the mouths of some politicians. So in an election, you should have, if you're in prison, to be sat down in front of all the people in the area where you are. And they've got to come in and they've got to explain to you why you should vote for them. And I think
So we'll
I think
have
it'll be very
another
good.
68,000 people who know nothing at all. I tell you
At the
something.
end of it, they might
we
know
should
something.
cut down the numbers of people who vote. We should cut only people who pay taxes should vote. Bam, the end. After that, because the people vote governments into power to use taxes properly, right? Why should anybody who doesn't pay tax vote? Give me a reason, James. Give me a reason.
Because you might suddenly lose your job. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. And then suddenly you wouldn't be a taxpayer. Should you then not be allowed to vote?
I will agree not to vote until I start paying tax again because
What if you're a housewife?
It doesn't make sense to. Well, if you're a housewife, you can go and work if you want to vote that much. I can tell you something. So many people don't vote. You know how many people didn't vote
Would
in
you
the
make it
American
compulsory
elections?
to vote?
You know how many people? 110 million
Yep.
didn't vote in the American elections. People didn't vote here. They just don't bother. So why should we put in another 69,000 people who probably won't vote anyway?
It goes to the heart.
That's
It
like
goes to the
gimmicks.
heart of your obligations as a citizen. Now, these
Gimmicks.
two prisoners they challenged a law that banned them from voting. They've had their appeals dismissed by the Supreme Court. They had been convicted for murder, a very clearly serious crime.
I like that one. Yes,
I-
to
but
murder.
I-
They're still citizens of the United Kingdom, though.
I would imagine most prisoners don't want to be bothered with voting, and I would think that it's a bit of an imposition to actually force them to vote and to think about the consequences when they're in prison. But, there's a more important thing to discuss here. The lack, when you have democracy and you take it for granted, people have died to get democracy all over the world, that maybe people should have to think more about who runs the country. It's not good enough to say, I don't really care about it, just want to get on with my life. You can't. You live in a society, therefore you must take part. I don't care who you vote for anybody you like.
All no good.
but-
They're all no good. So how can you vote?
well, in that
Well,
case,
you've
we
got no
might as well
choice.
all go to sleep and not wake up.
Speaking of jail sentences, the drug charity, it's called Skunk Sense, criticised a law which means that criminals are switching from selling hard drugs to cannabis because even if you have fewer than 10 plants in a single house, you can still avoid a jail term. You can still get a lenient sentence, but as Skunk Sense has pointed out, this 10 plants is still an awful
We
lot.
won't be able to stop James because he's a fervent supporter of legalizing all drugs. All of them.
Listen, my view, if you're pushing me, is that there are a lot of people, a lot of chief police officers as well, who say that prohibition is not stopping the problem that we have in this country, the problem that there is all over the world of drugs. And there has to be. I'm not in favour of legalising anything that's going to harm you. I think you'd be stupid to take drugs. I think you'd be stupid to smoke a cigarette, and I think you'd be very stupid to drink the amount of very strong alcohol that you drink. But
I do it socially.
Yeah, I think we have to look at the drug problem in a different way. It's not working the way it is. Not me saying this is what is coming from a lot of fairly eminent people and a lot of people from the police force.
Alexander, it's not working.
No, it's not. It's working because if you legalize drugs, any drugs, the dangers of drugs are being minimalized by all sorts of dodgy experts and some wacky police people who suddenly come out like that detective from forgot which place he came recently out and said we should legalize everything. And this is a dangerous game they're playing. And this, if youngsters have access to this stuff, which is damaging, we would have zombies all over the place. This is damaging
I
stuff.
agree, but they're
you
still
can't
doing
compare
it.
it to tobacco and alcohol.
This
please.
is a kind of.
You
I
can.
suppose the charity's point is that this is a decriminalisation in all but name. If you kind of turn a blind eye to someone who has 10 or fewer plants, then that's legalising.
They're already turning a blind eye. If you go into any nightclub in London, you would have the smell of cannabis there.
So what do you suggest we do about it?
No, we're not mentioning clubs here, but the nightclubs are usually open.
I'm just wondering which clubs you go to.
For opening. No, I just go there as an observer of this horrible stuff.
In the corner.
Because I can't stand this. Nightclubs, I don't understand. How can Prince William
you can't
and
smoke in a nightclub
brother
anyway.
go there? You remember they went there every night.
Will you stop knocking the royal family?
No, it's unbelievable.
How can just stop it.
It's the atmosphere's terrible. You can't hear a thing. The music is terrible.
But anyway, James was going to finish his point.
What are we going to do to solve the horrendous drug problem we have in the world, where there are gangsters?
Have a horrendous problem.
We do have a horrendous problem. We do.
Even the figures. You know how many people use heroin in Britain?
But you go to Colombia and see the amount of.
This is not a lot. If you legalize it, we will have 240,000. So they are also, look at the films, look at Hollywood, look at television, look at
all the
everything.
People,
they
all
are
the
promoting
people,
this image that everyone is on drugs. In the school, everybody's smoking. So it's not true. It's not true. I remember in my days as a student, we looked at people who smoked cannabis as idiots because we had such wonderful vodkas. So what was the point? Because they were idiots. They didn't really have a life.
Well, look, I think anybody who takes drugs who gets himself into that situation, you're absolutely right. And I don't think Hollywood or anybody else is promoting that it is cool to use drugs. I don't see that.
Tarantino did
I don't see that at all. What I think we need to do, though, and what a lot of people, I'm concerned about the health of a lot of people in this country. I'm also concerned about how people who get addicted fall into a life of crime. You talk to the police, and the police will tell you that 80% of the crimes in this country are committed by the same people over and over again. And of those people, an awful lot of them do it because they're addicted to drugs. If you look at the problems they have in some South American countries, Colombia and other, with the drug barons and the wars over there, these things are causing an enormous problem. Now, some people are saying if America looks at what happened in the time of Prohibition, in Chicago in particular, as soon as things were made illegal, then the mobsters turned up and they took control and it got worse.
There's certainly a prison theme in today's discussion. We've only got a couple of minutes left. But speaking of prison, a man who has been in prison, Tommy Robinson, leader of the EDL, the English Defence League, has suddenly seen the light in a joint press conference with the Quilliam Foundation. That's a multi-confessional anti-terrorist group, I suppose you could call them that. Has said, I'm sorry, mea culpa. I'm just wondering what you think about that, James. Tommy Robinson wants to fight Islamism in Britain, but through democratic means. I suppose that's quite noble. He seems to be getting quite good press on this.
I think he is. I don't know that he says he wants to fight religion of any. He wants people just
Muslim extremism.
Extremism, and I think he said that he wants to fight extremism on both sides, and there are extremists all over the place, religious extremists and non-religious extremists. And maybe he has seen the light, and that must be good.
He did, because I exchanged tweets with him.
Did you?
And explained to him that he was actually working for the wrong side.
Oh, well, it's down to you then. It's your
which side should he have been working?
Well, I said that you're basically helping the people who want this infighting to continue. That's what I said.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
We've run out of time. That's telling it like it is. Our weekly look at the stories making the headlines, as discussed by the broadcaster James Whale and the former Kremlin advisor Alexander Nekrassov. This is the Voice of Russia in London. My name is Brendan Cole.